Rehabilitation Act of 1973 prohibits the basis of disability in federal agency programs, financially assisted agencies in federal employment and in federal contractor employment practices.
Standards were designed to determine legitimacy and discrimination, which is now in Title I of the Americans with Disabilities Act.
A critical part of this change in human rights was Section 504 of the Act. Section 504 established the critical bridge between disability and anti-discrimination policies and law.
Although the Act does not mandate compliance by employers or public accommodations in the private sector or in publicly funded programs that aren't recipients of federal financial aid.
Human rights laws for both women and African Americans were being passed at the time, but there were still minority groups that weren't being protected by legislature.
This act was one of the first major revisions of national disability policy, driven by integration imperative and grounded in a fundamental reevaluation of the role of people with disabilities in American society.
The Civil Rights Act did not cover people with disabilities in American society, so the Rehabilitation Act of 1973 was put into motion.
Both previous civil rights movements demonstrated the possibilities and success of creative political and personal responses to discrimination and self-devaluation.
The movements emphasized the need for personal empowerment and community organizing among people with disabilities who traditionally had been very isolated. It was a definite product of controversy between Congress and the Nixon administration, vetoed in 1972, but then reconsidered and passed in 1973.
Atypical factors are medically diagnosed. People must have the label of disabled or handicapped to be protected by the law.
These principles are in line with accommodation because there are specific guidelines where one is considered disabled and specifies to what organization or businesses are still allowed to discriminate. Universally, not everyone is protected by this law, making the Rehabilitation Act of 1973 very case-specific.
Depending on what company you choose to work at, this law could be considered or not. The workspace and accommodations for disabled work staff would need to be instated. There would need to be plenty of support to make sure the people in the workplace were not being discriminated against, and that while hiring or firing an employee, nothing was done with an act's considerations.